Um, we have a very dear friend named Kirsten, um, who we received news while you were out that she's just got a few weeks left to live.
Mm.
And she's somewhere around our age. And she has been on this incredibly courageous and beautiful journey. And well, there were a couple things. One, she shared a last message basically with the world. Like, and it was from her heart about what she really thinks people ought to know, and like what she wanted to share with the world was a message of community and how the people that we love, the people in our networks are so special and important. And yes, social media is a place where you can experience that in a very, very positive way. And you don't have to do it somebody else's way. You can do it your way. It was really
Mm.
basically, I thought it was such a beautiful message. And I wanted to, I was curious. I mean, I know how I met Kirsten. I met her because she was a part of the global coach community. And I got to spend time with her every week for probably what, a year or so. And we've kept in touch. She's a good friend. And I was curious, Andrew, how you knew her, I guess, or how you'd met her, how she came into your life. And then well, then I'll ask the next question next.
Yeah, so well, I met her through the global coach community as well. When I in fairly early days, I think I remember putting some messages out on LinkedIn um, that were really around why we created a community, another community for coaches, different than all the other forums that are already out there. And a big part of it for me was from my own experience as a sports coach before, which was, I wanted to create a place that was not based on, what certification you had, what training methodology you were, following, who your gurus were, none of
Mm,
that,
hmm
or some business model that, I wanted a place that was more about supporting the human as a coach and leaving all of that other stuff out, but just recognizing that coaching, like any profession, is a journey in itself for the people who are pursuing it, and they need support, and they don't need to be sold to, they don't need to be told they're doing it wrong. They just need people to be with them and hear them and see them and support them. um, and that's not the case in most of the coaching community groups that exist.
mm.
And so that's why the global coach community was created. And that was the message I shared one day. And I remember Kirsten reaching out because that seemed to really resonate with her. And she was at that point very sort of timid about her coaching, very uncertain about her coaching and her message and her value and her offer.
Mm.
Um, and I think she appreciated that there could be a space where she could show up and get supported without any judgment about all of that, right?
Mm.
With a lot of people that would have empathy for where she was at. Um, and what was amazing was to watch her grow from that point in the community and outside the community, and really, perhaps as much as any of the coaches I've seen come through our community, really find her voice
Mm.
in a really powerful and professional and authentic way that it's just like so inspiring to see.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and that would have been how that is my memory of Kirsten. It would have been before hearing this news. Just that's how I see her, and that's how I have experienced her. And so it was pretty heartbreaking to get to port and read that post and to sort of piece together the puzzle, because I didn't have any context to where that was coming from, and
Mm.
didn't know all the details at all. And so, yeah, I mean, I celebrate the way she's handling it. It's remarkable to me. But I also celebrate the fact that she found something that I think she recognized was like the best version of herself as a
Yeah.
professional, as a human being, as a way to serve other people.
Yeah.
She found her voice. Um, it's a shame more people aren't going to get a chance to experience that, but I also celebrate the fact that she found it and she had that clarity and has that clarity.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, boy, if that seems like the journey we're all on. Um,
Right.
and whether it gets taken away uh, or not, to find it to me is just beautiful, and
Yeah.
that will always be my memory of Kirsten, is to watch her journey from as a spectator and a supporter, um, and to see it kind of go to where it went was just, it's why I do what I do. It's why any
Yeah.
of us, to watch that in another human being who's such a beautiful, genuine human being to start with, but to see somebody find themselves that way is just, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And the resonance that like there's this idea of you throw a pebble in a pond and then you watch the ripples, right? Like, well, they go out a long way. And she just she just had this really has, I mean, this really beautiful message. And I think you're right. It is, on the one hand, it's a real bummer that not more people will get to see that. That for her, the spaceship ride to the next dimension is maybe a little earlier than we would wish. But you're also right that this is a spaceship ride we are all going to take, you know? And
Yeah.
I was curious if you have a thought on what would your last message be? Like what would you really want the world to know
Mm.
before you get on that spaceship?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm thinking I got this hat
Mm,
here in Seattle. It says "Do Good," and I got it because it reminded me of a saying that we talk about in the coaching work we do in Chicago. That when people feel good, they do good.
mm,
People feel bad, they do bad. Um, and I think a lot of people try to do good in order to feel good.
mm,
Um, and I think it's the other way around. I think my message would be, find the things that make you feel good, that feel authentic, make you feel alive,
mm.
and then go with the things that you're inspired to do from there.
Wow. I feel that. If I think about if I think about my experience of knowing you, right? Like that's something that you've been helping me to do or that you helped me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to. I'm not going to add to that. I'm just going to say that it seems to be, and I talked about this on the global coach call a little earlier today, that it seems like a lot of people that are doing this sailing adventure are looking for the adventure to give them the feeling, or the feeling or the clarity or the whatever, but it's not the way it works, right? Like
Mm,
that becomes like taking drugs or drinking alcohol. It's like, well, eventually one drink doesn't make you feel the same way as it did the first time, and so you
yeah.
need two drinks, and then when does that's not a good path. And so I think helping people figure out what feeling good and feeling alive is for them, um, is the most important thing we can do, and to teach them the different, how the mind plays tricks on us, and how the mind is so much the source of that feeling good, and gets in the way of it, right?
Mm.
And how much of it is just a constructed thing of these random thoughts that we just forget that none of them mean anything unless we give them meaning, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity to help people take a shortcut to feeling good, save a lot of money, save a lot of time
Angst.
chasing angst and chasing this and that. Doesn't mean you can't still do it. Like I'm doing the sailing trip from a place of feeling complete and good before we started.
Yeah.
Um, and that makes the experience so much richer as a result. And at the same time, I sit beside people on the boat that were not in that place before the race started, and they're seeking the race to fill that gap. And so we have some great conversations about why the race cannot ultimately be the answer that they're looking for, because the race will be over,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then what's the next day going to offer to make them feel the way they want to feel, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, that would be a short message, but that would be my message.
Mm-hmm. When you feel good, you do good things.
Yeah.
So let's do more. Let's feel good more.
Feel good as a default, and do the things that that come from that are inspired from that feeling,
You know what?
because nobody's going to go and do bad stuff to the world. I remember talking about this once, like one Monday morning when I was out for a walk on the beach in Toronto, and all the garbage from the weekend was littered all over the beach and the park, within steps of the garbage cans.
Mm.
And I remember just thinking to myself, like, who are these people that
Mm-hmm.
would put their garbage on the ground right beside a beautifully designed container that's available to receive it? And what do you have to, what mindset do you have to be in to even contemplate that? Like that it's your right to just throw it on the ground instead of put it somewhere that it's going to be contained and taken away. Um, and I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. There's a sense of there's something about the experience of life that one is having that leads people to do things that are just not in the best interest of other humans or nature
Mm.
or what have you, or themselves, right? And that's what I'm super curious about, is helping people find their way to what feeling good looks like for them. And it's different for everybody. Like we've talked about the kids in Chicago that I work with. Those guys, feeling good is just being okay with the roller coaster that their life is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not feeling good like I'm at Disneyland or it's my birthday party, or it's just getting through the day with some clarity of mind and not getting caught up in negative emotions and negative events, just kind of staying on the level, staying in the midline, like we talked about on the tennis court, like
Mm-hmm.
just getting through stuff is enough for a lot of people. Um, but yeah, I think I wish I had known that lesson when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually interesting this week because my daughter Katrina and her fiance came out to surprise me here in Seattle, and we're here
What
when,
fun.
yeah, and they came out to the bar with us with the team one night, and were talking to some of my crewmates without me knowing, and they kind of got to the bottom of sort of my daughter sort of relaying that sort of how I had changed over her life, from
Mm.
being a more reactive, anxious, frustrated, person when she was young, to now being much more, at peace and happy, and just a different experience of me, and sort of how she's observed that, and so you know that was kind of cool to just kind of talk about that and talk about that journey, and about the points where I started to learn this basic rule of, the source of our best behavior is from an emotional point of view, is that when we understand how to be in a good emotional state, then the actions that come from that are going to be much more positive than the ones if we're in a negative state. And it seems so obvious, but most of our life we're chasing feelings, doing things to get a feeling instead of getting the feeling and then doing the things that were inspired from that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny, a lot of the things that in life that we learn are like the exact opposite of what society or what seems like the default when
Like
we're
the
growing
opposite
up.
of the conventional wisdom, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
why are, like, who's benefiting from not telling us the truth when we're kids? Or, but
Yeah.
maybe it's just an evolution of humanity as well, that we're starting to understand these things. I don't think so, because the books that are thousands of years old now have been
Somebody's
telling us this for a long time.
somebody's gotten this right.
Yeah,
And there's another part to that too, I think. And for me, it's about having compassion for when somebody isn't doing good because they're not feeling good, right?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, the kids in Chicago, I remember one of them saying to me that what changed for him is he now sees, the rivals in other gangs or other kids who are acting out. He sees them as having bad thinking days, not as being bad people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a huge shift for him. He used to think that they were just programmed to be bad, but
Hmm.
now he knows that their thinking is bad on that day, and it's very possible that the next day or the next moment they could have a different thinking moment and behave differently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it gives you a different way. Like, for me, it's just remembering that makes it so much easier to support people who are not behaving in the way that you might wish that they were, because
Exactly.
it just gives you a path in to go, yeah, like, I'm curious what's the thinking behind what's going on with you right now. Like, what's your perception of what's going on right now, or what are you believing about what you're experiencing right now that's leading you to feel this way? And when you start digging into that, it's pretty easy to find the source of the behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah. There is something so interesting about how this is not nurtured into us.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And I think you're right. There's an awareness. There's a level of awareness that, like, a lot of times I'll share a story about something that a kid of mine said to me, and somebody will go, "That's a really smart kid you got," or like, "Wow, what a special person they are for being
Mm.
able to approach that in this direction." You talking about, what your daughter seeing you in these different ways, like what's being nurtured into them.
Mhm.
It's so good.
Definitely.
And the other people around, not just our kids necessarily, but like the other folks around us, when our behavior changes, it gives them a different, standpoint too, which is
Mhm.
pretty cool. So, wow. All right. Well, I had a question I really wanted to ask you, but I think I'm going to save it because we are after our planned end time. So,
Okay.
um,
Was it
so
specific to this race, or was it more general?
I mean, hmm.
Let, let's go for it. I'll we'll go another 10 or 12 minutes.
All
It's
right.
fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Um, okay. So we have talked about apparent wind. Okay, like we've sort of glanced at like apparent wind on this show. And I have you and I've talked about this a little bit before. When I'm walking and I'm cranking and I'm going at a really good pace, I will feel this really interesting feeling, which I've started to think of. One way to look at it is it's almost like a self-perpetuating speed, like going going in this way that I'm going is sort of creating something that makes me feel like I'm even more going. I don't know how to say it
Mhm.
exactly, but there's this really interesting feeling. And I wondered if that was related to apparent wind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's no different than, if you stick your hand out the car window, you feel the apparent wind, which is the actual wind, which might be, in one direction or the other. Um, and on top of the movement of the car, the two sort of either opposing each other or going in the same direction or what have you, creates what you could call the apparent wind, which is sort of the wind that you're experiencing with the movement that you're having.
Mhm.
So on the boat, if we have a 15-mile-an-hour wind and we're sailing into the wind, like towards the direction of the wind, so upwind in sailing,
Okay.
then the boat is moving, forward towards the wind, and the wind is, you know, pushing back against us. The wind feels stronger. The wind feels like it would, if you put your hand out the window in the car, because
Mm.
we're moving into the wind, and the wind is moving across us in the opposite direction. And it actually feels even stronger than the 15 miles an hour wind. If we just turn the boat around with the exact same wind strength, 15-mile-an-hour wind feels like about 10 or 9-mile-an-hour wind when we're going in the same direction as the wind. So the movement of our boat is not creating a force, sort of an opposing force. It's sort of complementing. And so, yeah, it's exactly the same phenomena as what you're experiencing. On the boat, it's a really important factor because the apparent wind angle is the wind that the boat is actually experiencing, whereas the direction that the wind's coming from is sort of irrelevant because it's not taking into account the boat nor the movement of the boat or the direction of the boat.
Mm.
So the apparent wind is the wind that we actually experience on the boat, and that's the wind that we trim the sails according to, that we choose the sails that we're going to use according to. And so, yeah, it's always changing as the boat speed changes, as the direction of the boat changes, and then as the actual wind changes. All of those things are playing together to create what the apparent wind experience is.
Wild.
Yeah.
How, related question from what you were just saying, if you are sailing directly into the wind, how are you moving forward?
Yeah, we don't sail directly into the wind. We can sail about 40 to 45 degrees off of the true wind direction.
Okay, so that's why you do the tacking or
Yes.
whatever, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
utilizing the wind. You have to get a certain degree away from the being directly into it to be able to have it fill the sails, have it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And what ends up happening is you have to get to an angle where the wind will go over the sails. The sails are all shaped very similar to an airplane wing. So you have to get to an angle where the wind will flow over both the top and bottom edge of the sails fairly smoothly to create the kind of lift that allows the boat to move forward. Just like the plane has to get going at a certain speed in a stable wind to get the wind to go over the wings to get the plane to get off the ground, as we all wish it would when we're going down the runway. So yeah, it's and it's quite interesting to experience that and to see how you can manipulate the sails and steer the boat in different ways to take advantage of that apparent wind. It's a big part of getting the boat to go as fast as possible is to actually shape the sails and trim the sails and steer the boat in a way that optimizes the wind angle and also the conditions of the waves and the sea state. So
Well, I have this memory of being probably about 9 years old and on a catamaran in the ocean with my dad and my brother in irons, meaning like we couldn't figure out how to get the boat to a point where it wasn't pointed towards the wind. And my
yes.
brother was 7 at the time, and he like yanked on a part of a sail that turned us, like it caught the wind in a way and it turned us so that we could get back in. It was so cool.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, we've had that a couple of times by accident over the whole race in September, where either a new helms person or sometimes the wind shifts very dramatically all of a sudden, and we end up sort of head to the wind and in irons, and then have to find a way to bear away. But
Mm,
yeah, I mean, it's the beauty of and that's part of the fun of being out there interacting with the wind as we do, is that's an ongoing, like it doesn't stay the same for more than a few seconds at a time. So you're
mm.
always adjusting and trimming and steering the boat to try to keep as straight a line as possible, keep the speed going as steady as possible, and that's part of the adventure for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. I think I always want to ask about well, a kind of a wildlife check. A and B, I heard a rumor that there was assassin on the boat, that there was the game Assassin on the boat,
Mhm.
which I always want to hear about.
Yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
the assassin one first. Yeah, we played, and once again, I was successful. Nobody seems to be able to kill me, which is
Hmm.
great, but I'm also not very good at figuring out ways to kill other people. This,
Mm,
anybody listening, this is a game that we play with sort of a kind of a clue kind of yeah.
yeah.
We're trying to get people to take an item on the boat from us at a certain location on the boat. Um, and so I ended up getting to the end, I think the final four, but I had no kills, so I was eliminated from going to the final two.
Oh,
And then we ended up actually not even finishing. I don't think either of the final two were successful. So I think it ended in a stalemate at the
Miss
end
Tillman.
anyway. Yeah.
What do you know what the person who you were targeted by, what were they supposed to give you and where? Do you know?
Um, I don't know if I know that.
Hmm. I remember one time it was gravy on the foredeck.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, no, I don't think. I don't know.
Huh.
I know that the one that I got stuck on was um, I had to one of the sort of navigation pieces of equipment we have is called a sextant, which is
Okay.
sort of an old-fashioned tool used to determine your location based on the location of the sun relative to the horizon. So it's this sort of fancy unit that you have to come out on deck and spot the sun and the horizon, and there's some numbers you and then the calculations that you have to do. So I had to try to get somebody to take that from me, and in some strange, I can't remember what part of the boat it was, but it
Yeah.
made absolutely no sense. It would have been so blatantly obvious. So I didn't even put a lot of effort into it, to be honest. I just thought I'd ride it out for a while and see where I got to in the
See what
game.
happened. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then wildlife wise, well, I mentioned the sperm whale, which was a big highlight for a lot of us.
I bet.
We saw some humpbacks doing some breaching.
So
So
breaching is when they come out of the water?
yeah, when they do sort of their big jump and twists.
Wow.
Yeah, and then lots of dolphins again, and lots of birds. We didn't see any orcas on the way in to Seattle, but wouldn't be surprised to see them on the way out or down the west coast. There's definitely lots of orca territory here. And there should be lots of whale activity up and down the coast, California and that whole area. And
Wow.
Mexico is a big sort of travel area for the whales. So, I mean, it's exciting, but also, when you come up beside a sperm whale and you see that it's like 4 or 5 times the length of the boat, you don't want to run into one at any
No.
speed. So yeah, it's also something we have to be on the lookout for, is to make sure we're safely navigating and not hurting any of them and not hurting the
Yeah.
boat. But yeah, I think the rest of the way, to be honest, I mean, all around North America, down the West Coast and Central America should be pretty active, and then through the Caribbean and up the East Coast should be active, and then North Pacific as well, or North Atlantic should
Place
be
for a lot of interesting wildlife.
yeah, I think so. So looking forward to more of that.
I
Mike's
bet.
been Mike's been busy spotting more and more birds, and so um, but yeah, I mean, this next leg should be fascinating. It's not typically very windy, so, and the wind is generally uh, sort of coming from the north towards the south, so it's going in the direction we're going, and the current is going southward along the coast. So and the weather will be warming up as we go, which I think we're all excited about.
Looking forward to.
Yeah, I kind of repacked and sent some stuff home with Katrina today, and yeah, got rid of a few layers of winter clothing.
Wow.
Because between this, between now and the end of June, we'll be in North America, and so it should be pretty pleasant. And then, July across the Atlantic should be reasonable weather as well. So,
Ah. So, I think I don't know if this is going to be two different answers or not, but I'm really curious about where we will talk to you next, but also where
mm.
will you be in the world next?
Yeah. So the next stop for us will be for a few days in Panama. I think Panama City. And that will be to refuel the boats before we go through the canal, and then restock with fresh grocery, fresh meat and vegetables and stuff, fruit. So I may be available to chat there. Otherwise, it'll be in Washington, D.C., probably third week of June. So this
Mhm.
is actually time-wise the longest leg of the race, in that, it's basically 28 days plus, yeah, so it's almost 60 days from departure to arrival in Washington.
Good golly. Wow.
Yeah. So it's 28 days of May
Because it's the
and
1st of May. That's right.
40 and 22 days of June. So yeah, maybe that's 50. Sorry, 50
50. Yeah.
50 days at sea. So yeah, that's a long time without a real layover and reset, and all with the same. It'll be all the same crew, and as I
Mhm.
mentioned off the top, a lot of new crew, and actually the most people we've had on the boat of any leg so far. I think we're at 21 for this race.
Wow.
So yeah, so that'll be interesting because we've got close quarters and hot, steamy conditions. It's going to be interesting to see how that
Yeah.
plays out.
Yeah. But like there's some different social dynamics, it feels like when the conditions are even a little more,
Yeah.
I don't know, interesting or crowded or whatever. Um, I I think that we're gonna be in Washington, D.C. together.
Yes, I think you mentioned that you were looking to go there in person, so that would be fantastic. We
Yeah.
can do a live in-person interview for the first time.
Super fun. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, can't remember if we talked about this on this show or if we talked about it before, but you had the experience in Seattle of seeing folks that you've only known virtually, like in person.
It's true. Yeah, yeah. One of the great joys this week has been to meet, to get connected to a lot of people. Well, people from Western uh, Canada, but also and people in Seattle that I've met mostly through the coaching community, but also, I had one of my university students that I coached come down from Vancouver, a high school friend come down from Vancouver, um, met Nick's sister and brother-in-law here in Seattle. And then, yeah, I mean, a couple days ago, I had a chance to have lunch with three of our coaching community members, all of whom I've spent quite a bit of time with. And it was really cool. It was a really, I think for two of them, Paul and Andrea, it's been at least 4 years that we've been talking and supporting each other pretty regularly.
Mm.
And certainly me talking about the race and then signing up for the race and then getting ready for the race was part of that. And so, and for so long, it seemed like way in the future that I would be in Seattle, and then boom, then
Boom.
all of a sudden we're sitting in a restaurant together having lunch, and um, it was really cool. It was really, I think my takeaway was, the relationship we had virtually was a really, really rich and deep one because we all showed up very honestly and very openly, and built a trust in each other, to go through all kinds of stuff. We used to have, Paul and Andre and I had a weekly call, just the three of us, and we never knew what was going to come out of it and who needed help, but
Mm.
it was inevitable that somebody by default just needed to be heard and needed to be supported and needed some questions to be asked, or that would help them. And so when we met in person, because of the investment we had made in the relationship, it was an amazingly natural and normal kind of feel of old friends kind of connecting and having lunch together. And that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to be reminded that these tools, a lot of people dismiss these tools because they're not personal or whatever. I think it's more about how you show up.
Meaning
And
like the tools, meaning like the way to communicate virtually or
yeah, like, that you can't either work remotely and have Zoom or whatever tool as the means of connecting with other people,
Mhm.
that, that it can never replace in person. And I think it's really more incumbent on how we show up, or more important, how we show up, no matter whether it's in person or virtual or whatever.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, that's sort of been my takeaway from the whole thing, has been sort of how powerful it is that you can develop really deep, meaningful relationships with people, even through technology. And look, there's no chance we would have probably met otherwise if it
Right?
hadn't been for the technology. And so, yeah, it was very rewarding. It was very fun to connect in person that way, and it was really meaningful.
You shared, or maybe it was Andrew Mead who shared a picture of the four of you sort of crowded into, I think it was like somewhere on the boat, and
Mhm.
you just look so happy
Oh
together.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
this is awesome.
That
Yeah.
was a great photo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think unless there's something that you can think of that you'd like to share or that you want to bring up, I think we're pretty much there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think these calls, we're gonna have to put a time limit on ourselves because I think
We
they get.
tried this time.
I know.
We
Yeah,
did try. Well,
yeah,
anyway, very much appreciate your time. Love these conversations and love bringing them out to folks. So,
yeah. Well, I
thank you.
really, really appreciate you investing your time and expertise to do these. So thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's a lot of fun. All right. I guess we'll maybe Panama.
Maybe
We'll
Panama,
fingers crossed
sort of end of May, start of June, or a few weeks later in DC.
in DC.
Hmm.
Woohoo.
Hmm.
All right. Thank you very much. Safe travels,
Thank you.
and we'll see you when we see you in the world.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening. Where in the World is Andrew Moss is produced by me, Kay Locke Culp. If, like me, you're inspired by Andrew's journey, you can follow along in his Facebook group, Climb Aboard Andrew's Adventure. The link is in the show notes. Also, this is the longest time that Andrew has been away from his family and his work. He truly has no idea what lies on the other side of this adventure. You can contribute to Andrew's adventure costs and help soften the blow of a year away from his beloved coaching practice by donating to his GoFundMe at the link in the show notes. And Andrew asks that you consider making a donation to his boat's UNICEF fundraiser, also at the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and for supporting Andrew if you can. Join us next time when once again we answer the question, where in the world is Andrew Moss?